Wonderful. Hi, then let's get to it. So, my name is Rami Ismail. Like I said, I've been making games for about 15 years. I made press kit. I run GameDev.world. I hosted a panel called One Reason to Be. I write a newsletter called Leveling the Playing Field. I post too much on social media. Um, One thing I want to tell you, and I think I want to tell you this for everybody who's going to talk to you on this entire program, is everybody who talks to you has been in this industry for a long time. And because they've been in this industry for a long time, what you're going to get is you're going to get their opinions being changed and colored by the experiences they had. You're entering the games industry now in 2026. That's a different industry than the industry that I entered back in 2010, right? And so a lot of the things I say will be from the perspective of somebody who entered the industry in 2010. And if you listen to some of the other speakers, they will have been around as long as I have, or maybe even longer. And so they will have perspectives that are based on that. So if I say things that make you go, yes, absolutely, I should do that, listen to those. And if I say things that make you go, I don't want to, I think that's not right, then don't do that. Just trust your own gut. This is a creative field, so you got to do what you think is right. So I want to talk a bit about creative direction versus production. So I want to talk about having the idea versus actually making the idea and how those two intersect. And so I want to separate that out by describing a bit about what we're doing and why. So in your team, or if you're just one person in your brain, there's two parts, right? There's something called creative direction, and that is the act of trying to make a game based on a vision that is in your mind, an idea, a feeling, a thought. And then on the other side, you have production, which is your ability to actually develop the work in time, within budget, without spending 7 years making a thing that isn't worth working 7 years on sometimes, right? And so in most companies, in most studios, in most teams, that will be two separate people. Now, if you're a solo developer, you're going to have to do both of those together. And that's incredibly hard, but it is a good skill to practice. If you're in a team, you should always make sure that these are two separate people, right? Because when you think about it, you can think of game development as a single line going from the start to the finish. But if we're really honest about it, it looks a bit more like this, where there's programming and art and sound and design and narrative and all these areas are next to each other. And then if we're really honest about it, it looks more like this, right? You build a thing and then you realize, oh, actually, I need this. And then you build that. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, I need this. And now you have to build that. And so a lot of things are happening. But to simplify it, if you had to break down game development in three phases, you have the defining phase, the affecting phase, and the implementing phase. And so the defining phase all the way here is at the start. And in the defining phase, your creative brain wants to experiment. You're trying things, you're building things, you're if you don't have the skills to program, you might be testing things on paper or with cardboard or with board games or whatever you have that you can use. A lot of my games start on paper, right? Your producing brain is trying to get all of these experiments into a document or a file or a prototype or something that is set, right? That you can't just keep changing because the creative brain wants to keep changing things. The producing brain wants to define things, wants to create definition. And so in the affecting stage, sort of this stage, you've made some decisions, right? And because you've made decisions, other decisions are no longer possible. So all the way at the start, the first decision you make, the genre could be a decision, or maybe a jump that you can jump. Well, if you add jump, right, now it's really hard to make an airplane game because airplanes don't jump, right? So just by making that first decision, you've taken away millions of video games that you could have made that you can no longer make. And then you add choices as you experiment, and eventually you get to the point where you're affecting the green part where you have decisions made, but the decisions you're making are locked by the decisions you've already made. You can no longer do everything. What you do has to make sense. And so in that part, the creative now tries to define. They're trying to figure out, okay, which parts of these games of this game has to be true. While the producer on the other side is trying to figure out, okay, how long does everything take? How long does it take to make a character? How long does it take to make a level? How long does it take to make a quest? How long do these things take? Right. And then finally, when we get to implementing, which is the largest part of the game, the creative brain just wants to add. They want to add more levels, add more mechanics, add more characters, add more quests. And the producing brain or the producer of your team wants to say, "La, halas, enough. We don't want more. Right? We're good." Don't add more. In fact, add less, right? And so to get through this chaos, we need structure and we need preparation. And so the first thing you're going to do is build a prototype. And now when we say prototype, I think a lot of us don't use the word prototype correctly. When a lot of people say prototype, they think sort of like a pretty part with all the animations and the level and it looks good and it plays good. A prototype needs to be cheap. It needs to be fast. It needs to be programmed in as little time as possible. Your programmer, or if you are programming yourself, you need to cry at how bad the code is when you review the code. That's how fast you want to be programming this prototype. I want you to prototype so aggressively, so quickly that by the end of your prototype, you want to throw the code away and start over. Because the prototype, the goal of it is just to answer a question. And so the question is two parts. Our why and their why. Our why are we making it and their why are we playing it. So let's start with our why. Why are we making it, right? So if you have any game, you can draw this chart about this game. And so this chart is very simple. You've got your mechanics, which is the rules of the game, right? If I press this button, this happens. If I shoot that enemy, they lose this much health. If I jump, I go up, then I stay up a little bit, and then I fall back down. All of those are mechanics. And then you've got your declarative layer. Your declarative layer is the way we communicate the mechanics into the player's brain, right? Because the mechanics, they don't mean anything. If I say a character moves at a speed of 5, you don't know whether that's fast or slow or whether it's running or crawling or whatever. You can only communicate that through the art and the animation, right? And so unless we communicate the mechanics to the player, they work as mechanics, but they don't have meaning, right? So the declaration, the sound, the art, the narrative, all these things are incredibly important. If you've ever played Monopoly, you've got the normal Monopoly, which is about buying houses and being a landlord and making your friends go bankrupt. But you also have the Lion King Monopoly, which is about becoming king of the jungle. And it has nothing to do with hurting your friends. Even though it is the exact same game mechanically, it feels very different to play because the mechanics are explained differently, right? They're declared differently. But the most important part about this chart is the core. At the core of every video game is a feeling. It's not a smart thing. It's not a oh, what if I made this game plus this game? It's a feeling. It's a reason you want to care about this game, right? And the reason that's important is because as you um as you make your game, you need to have this heart of your game as a creative director that you can refer back to, right? So say we are talking about the God of War games, new God of War games. Those are games about hitting things with an axe and throwing swords and smashing enemies and like having rage and like all that. But if you really ask what those games are about, they're about a dad. They're games about a dad who wants to be loved by his son, but the dad only knows how to solve problems with violence, and the son only is curious. The son doesn't want to fight. The son wants to learn. He wants to see. And so the dad tries to solve all of his problems with violence, and that is pushing the two apart, right? And so at the end, when the father realizes that to allow his son to be the man he wants to become, he should let the son be curious, right? That's the end of the game a little bit. It's like, okay, we connect. The son starts to learn why his dad sees the world. His dad sees it, and the dad starts to see the world the way his son sees it, and he realizes that he's going to have to let go, and that he can't make his son into himself, right? And so, because of that, because the point of the character is that he is so strong that he's perfect at violence. He can kill dragons with his hands, right? Because of that, you can't make the argument that if only he was better at violence, maybe then his son would love him, right? It doesn't matter how good he is at violence, and to prove that he needs to be the best at violence. And so everything in God of War, every mechanic, every piece of art, every animation, every part of God of War is built towards creating these little moments where the two of them connect and then pushing them apart again because Kratos, our main character, can only solve things through violence, right? And Atreus can only solve things through curiosity. And so when you think about it, all of that points in the same direction. Why is the axe in God of War so powerful? It's because Kratos needs to be the best at violence for that story to work. If he was not the best at violence, they could just say, well, if only he was better at violence, then maybe his son would love him. Right? So he needs to be the very best. And so everything in God of War points back in that direction. And so when you look at the jobs in a team, in the disciplines, you've got your designer and your programmer sitting on the mechanical layer. You've got your writers, your artists, your audio team sitting on the declarative layer. And at the heart of it all, you've got your creative director. The creative director just holds the vision. You know the feeling, and you're going to make sure the feeling seeps into every part of your game. It is part of every bit of your game, right? And if you do that, you make a good game. And if you don't do that, you start getting in trouble, right? Now, why do people play games? People play games for a very simple reason. People play games because they want to be lied to. They want us to lie to them, right? So this here is a high score chart, but none of these numbers are real. Somebody programmed them and said, well, a higher number is better. And then they made sure you can only get number by playing in a certain way. And so at the top, Get over there thinks he's pretty cool. But I don't know if Get's pretty cool. What if the code was the other way around? What if a lower score was better? And Mordin from Mass Effect isn't a real character. Mordin doesn't exist. These aliens don't exist. They're not real. We just created them to be able to tell a story. And Baldur's Gate is not a real city, right? It doesn't exist, right? Our job is to be a professional liar. And the reason this lie works, right, is because the player has an idea about how games work. We call that the mental model. And the mental model is everything you know about video games. So if I would grab a controller, do I have a controller here? I don't have a controller here. Oh, I took it to a playtest. Crap. If I had a controller for a racing game, which button is accelerate? There's two correct options. Option one is right trigger. Option two is the low face button. So A on an Xbox, X on a PlayStation, right? Those are the only two right options. It's the right trigger for serious racing games, and it is the A/X button, the face button, for arcade racing games like Mario Kart, right? Those are the only two right options. If somebody made a racing game where accelerate was left stick backwards, you would just uninstall the game immediately, right? Because that's crazy. That's the mental model. Players have an idea of how games work. Now, when they start playing your game, the information your game gives them goes into their mental model. So every moment of the gameplay, they're processing, they're thinking, they're going, okay, listen, I can see this is happening. I want that to happen. So I'm going to press this button. When they go, okay, I want to do something, that's called generating an intent. So at this point, the player has an intention of what they want to do. And they turn that into pressing a button. They press a button or a key or whatever it is, right? They do anything. Maybe they use the haptics or the gyroscope, or they scream at the microphone, or they wave at the Kinect, or whatever it is. But the computer sees that they want to do something. That goes into the game. The game translates that. And so the game goes, okay, the player pressed right button. So I'm going to move the character from here to here. The enemy now sees him, so the enemy is going to move. And then the enemy is not ready to shoot yet, but the player might be ready to shoot. And then there's a little bit of light that happens here, and the timer continues. So the game is translating all this stuff, and then it gives that information back to the player in the form of output. Visuals, sound, haptics, controller vibration, whatever it is. And that goes back into the player's mental model, and that updates it. And so the player is continuously going down this loop 30, 60, 120 times per second, right? And now if we go back to this chart, the core part, the declarative part is this part. This is the part where the game goes, okay, this happened. Let me explain it so that it goes back in the player's brain. The mechanical part is this part. The player has an idea of what they want to do. They know how they can do it. They press a button, and that goes into the game. And so if you overlap these two things, right, two parts get touched by both. The mental model and the black box. The black box is the video game. It's where all the processing happens, all the calculations, all the math, and all the stuff. The mental model is just the player's brain. The only place a video game actually happens is in the mental model. The code is just the delivery method. The game is just the delivery method. Because if a player doesn't believe us, it stops working, right? So if you're playing the Call of Duty campaign or something like it, and you're playing it, and suddenly you get distracted by something, or you start laughing at something, or you're annoyed at something, then the whole thing stops working, right? Millions and millions of dollars, and it just stops working because you stop believing it, right? And so the mental model is the only place where things are real. So when you're building this, the important part is that we create this core mechanics declarative in such a way that it all goes into the player's brain in such a way that they continue to believe our lie. Because that's what they want from us. They want to pay us money or give us their time so that we will lie to them. And then our lie will give them feelings. Whether those feelings are being awesome or being smart or being sad or laughing or whatever, it doesn't matter. They pay us to lie to them so that they can have feelings, right? And so whatever video game you're making, you can also draw this chart as a creative director. So this is for a shooter. Imagine these three circles, right? That first circle, the small one, is 1 second. So imagine a little dot going around that 1 second. What happens in 1 second in your video game? Now, if you're making a first-person shooter, the player is aiming, right? They're aiming with their crosshair. They're putting the crosshair on the enemy. They click the button, right? That's it. That's all they're doing in 1 second. There's no more time. So as they go around that loop 5 times, they also go around the 5-second loop 1 time. What are they doing in 5 seconds in your game? Well, they're moving. They're trying to get a little bit out of danger. They're trying to see which enemy they need to fight first. They're trying to get to a health pack, whatever it is, right? And then as they go around that 5-second circle, every 3 times that goes around, the 15-second circle goes around once. What are they doing in 15 seconds? Well, they're keeping an eye on the entire battlefield, right? They're saying, okay, there's going to be reinforcements from there. I have some allies over there. I have this much health. I should probably back up a little, maybe back to where I was. And so each of these circles is different. That's what creates depth. Is every of these circles is the same circle? If every 15 seconds, all you were doing is putting crosshair on the enemy and then clicking, it would not be an interesting game. It would be a boring game. Because all you're doing is putting the crosshair on enemies and clicking, right? And so you need to look for these circles in your game and figure out what the circles are. Now, for a strategy game, obviously the middle circle, the 1 second circle, is going to be 5 seconds. And then the second circle is going to be 15 seconds. And the outside circle is going to be a minute, perhaps, right? So the numbers can change. But the idea of that there's always 3 loops, a short, a medium, and a large, is almost always true for almost any video game you play. And so in our prototype, we're trying to figure this out. These are the 2 questions we're trying to figure out. Do we have a core? Can we find mechanics that communicate the feeling? And can we get the loop? Can we get the short loop, the medium loop, and maybe even the long loop, right? And so as we're working that way, we got to try things. We just got to try things. And there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. You just try something. You have a goal. I want to get this feeling. Let me build something. Does it work? Yes. Does it partially work? Okay, let's keep the part that works. Let's throw away the part that doesn't work. Does it not work? Okay, khalas, we move on to the next one. Huh? And so we go around that little loop of like, okay, let's try something. Let's test this. Okay, it works. Great. Let's keep it. Let's try something. Let's test this. Okay, this doesn't work. Let's throw it away. Oops. So you want to keep this loop short. You can't be spending 3 weeks going around this loop. It has to be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And that's enough. We don't have time, right? So you want to get faster at this. You want to prototype faster. So like Sophie said at the beginning, of like, if you don't have the skills to program the thing, do it on paper. Paper is much faster than code, right? And a lot of games you can actually prototype on paper, right? Or use other games to try it, mod existing games, try different things, right? But anything that's fast is better than anything that's slow. The shorter it is, the better. And so at this point, I want you to be reckless, write bad code, try big values. So if your character is moving, you're like, it's too slow. The character is moving 2, it's too slow. Instead of going like 2.5, go 4. go double, right? And then if four's too fast, okay, delete 3, we'll try in the middle, right? And then we keep going in between, but we make big jumps. If enemies are too strong, make them half as weak. If there's not enough chaos, double the enemies. Big changes, big change, not tweaks, no tweaks. This is too early for tweaks. We do tweaks later in development. This is testing. Fast, quick, reckless, right? And the thing you're looking for is for it all to fit together. So if you're making a game about chaos, there needs to be lots of enemies. There needs to be lots of things happening. If you're making a game about history, it needs to communicate the history. You need to feel connected to it. If you're making a game about culture, you need to make sure that the people from that culture, but maybe also the people outside of that culture, can connect to it and start feeling something for it. How do you make somebody feel home in a video game? Well, look at Mass Effect. They made a spaceship feel home, right? The Normandy in Mass Effect is one of the best homes in the games industry, but Skyhold and Dragon Age or any of these games, home is a thing you can build in video games. You can do it in God of War, you can do it anywhere, right? So if you have this core feeling, this is what you need to achieve. Because you need to be able to say, okay, this is true. And so when you have an idea, it's like a blob, and the blob can shift so many ways, right? So if I say we have a dragon, there's a dragon in a castle. Yeah? There's a dragon in a castle, and you're fighting the dragon. You can visualize that. You can have that idea, right? You can have that. You can see that in your mind. We're gonna fight a dragon in a castle. You can see the color of the stones, right? What color are the stones? Are they red? That's good. What if I told you I want them to be blue? Your brain can adjust, right? It goes, oh yeah, okay, blue. Tamam, blue. Khalas, we'll do blue, right? What if I told you that you're fighting the dragon in a tank? That's weird, but you can still do that, right? Your brain will still go like, oh yeah, okay, so we're fighting the. So your brain will accept anything. Your brain is super flexible. Code is not. Computers are not. Art styles are not, right? So if you want to do, okay, tanks and dragons, we got to have that idea from the start, right? We can't just start working on a fancy RPG and then go, okay, we'll throw in a space shuttle. You can't do that. Our brain can, the computer can't. It's too much work, right? And so right now, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to say, okay, this is true. It's a game about this feeling. This is the main character. This is the main mechanic that you're going to be doing in the game. And we're just trying to make so that the blob can't change into anything anymore. Because now I've said a dragon and tank. If I go and you have a sword, you're like, okay, listen, wait, it's getting a bit much, right? Because your brain is starting to make these truths. Okay, there's a dragon. Okay, the stones are blue. Okay, there's a tank. And then if it goes sword, you start going like, okay, listen, it's getting a little weird, right? But until I said sword, you were like, yeah, no, tank and dragon, totally fine, right? But as soon as I started saying this is true and this is true and we can't change it, your brain started seeing that there are limits to how far it can change. So that's the prototype. That's all we're doing. At this point, if you're a team, you want to get together and agree on it. If you're a single person, start writing things down. Not just writing, start finding reference art of how you want the game to look, or if you can draw, or if you can do art, make some concept art, right? But this is where you start saying, okay, this is true. The producer, the person who's trying to protect the development of the game, or the part of your brain who's trying to protect the development of the game, you're trying to protect the momentum. So you want to make sure that things keep moving. And so the thing I want you to look for is pick an amount of time. Say 2 weeks. So your brain says this would be cool. And then the other half of your brain has to say, okay, let's give ourselves 2 weeks to figure out if it is cool. If at the end of the 2 weeks, your creative person or your creative brain says, oh, but we're so close. We're so close. We're almost there. I think it's going to work. Then give yourself another week, right? Half the time. And if then after that week, it's still good, okay, let's continue. If after that week, you're still almost there, done. Next idea. Next game. We'll come back to this idea later, right? But let's move on. There's not a lot of time. I'm 37. Every game takes 3 years to make. I have 10 games left in me before I retire, right? I'm almost done. Like I'm over halfway of my career. I've done 20 games. I have 10 games left. I don't have time to think about like bad game ideas. I need to figure out whether it's good or not quickly and then build it. And so if you're looking for money, this is also the first time you can talk to publishers. You have a prototype, you can play it, and hopefully the prototype is interesting. You don't have to do a full pitch, but you might want to talk to publishers. Now, from here, we go to our vertical slice. And so, vertical slice, I want you to look at the game a completely different way. Because at this point, we know what the game is, we know what the feeling is, we've tested some mechanics, the mechanics are kind of good. Now we need to split the game in two parts. The first part is features, and the second part is content. The reason I want you to split this is because it's very important that you can think about these things separately. So a feature is a verb: walk, jump, die, win, lose, save, load, anything that is a thing you do in the game. And features are normally structural. So if you add a jump to the game, that really changes the game because your level design has to make sure that you can jump and that you cannot jump out of the level. If you don't have jump, you don't have to worry about this. But if you have jump structurally, your game is different now. And your content is nouns. So they're levels, worlds, characters, weapons, items, buildings, vehicles, whatever it is, they're anecdotal. If you remove one, you can usually just replace it with another. So if you have a big castle and we're like, listen, we don't have time to make the castle, I can just remove the castle and make it a forest. And it'd be a little weirder, but I could still make it work, right? So I need to be able to separate out these two ideas, okay? Now, at this point, as creative director, because you're now defining, I want you to look at the pillars of your game. And so your pillars and anti-pillars are effectively, I try to always recommend teams get 3 pillars, 3 things that are true about your video game. So you're making a game about Iraqi culture. Huh? You're making a game about culture. What culture? Because culture is a big word. What part of culture? Are we making a game about the food? Are we making a game about the music? Are we making a game about the land? Are we making a game about the history? Are we making a game about a specific part of history? Are we making a game about the language? Are we making a game about walking to a local store or a local cafe and having shay and just sitting there and watching the day go by? Which part of culture, right? And what feeling is that culture? Is that a warm feeling? Is that a sad feeling? Is that a happy feeling? How does that fit in your life? How does that fit in your day? These are pillars. Anti-pillars are the opposite. This is what the game is not, right? And so you might say, okay, it's a cultural game, but I don't want it to be an educational game. It's not a lesson. I want to communicate a feeling. I don't want to teach you about our history. I want you to feel how I feel about this history, right? I want you to feel a certain pride that I feel. I want you to feel a certain sadness about something, or I want you to feel. So it might not be an educational game, or you might say, no, 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 it's not a feelings game. It is an educational game. Anti-pillars is the opposite. What is the game not? And if you write down 3 things that the game absolutely is, and 3 things that the game absolutely is not, it's much easier to make the game because when you get 6 months into development on a game, sometimes you forget. And then having it on the wall, I have mine on the wall right there for the 2 games I'm working on, is super helpful because you can just look and be like, oh no, that's what I was making, right? And then you have USPs, unique selling points. Every game has a thing that is unique. Any successful game has a thing that is unique. Balatro is a roguelike with poker. Clair Obscur is a JRPG, but very French, right? Peak is a French slop climbing game, right? And so all of these games have an easy way of saying, okay, this is it, but there's nothing like it. What is that for your game? What's unique about your game? And don't give me a list of genres. Just don't go like, oh yeah, it's an action rogue. Like if I can't Google it with your description, it's not good enough. I need to be able to type your description into Google and find your game. So if I say poker roguelike, I'm going to get Balatro. This is not going to be a different game. But if I go action roguelike survival, I get 4,000 games. I will never find yours. So your unique selling point needs to be unique enough that I can type it into Google. Your producer at this point, the way your producer is going to think is they're going to think about features and content as well, but they're going to think about it from the production perspective. So features are harder to cut and harder to scale, to change. But content is easy to cut and easy to scale. It's easy to add content. It's easy to remove content. You just have to make it, right? And so if you change a feature, say we remove the jump, now all of the level design that requires a jump has to be redone. So just cutting one line of code means 3 months of work. All the levels have to be redone. So it's really important that we lock in the features as early as possible, as quickly as possible. The sooner the better. Well, for content, we can take much longer. So a lot of people, when they think of game ideas, they start from content. They start thinking about the level, they start thinking about the characters, they start thinking about the stories. I'm going to tell you, that stuff is so much less important until you figured out your features, because your features are going to define what content you can use. If you have a first-person camera, that changes the story you can tell from a third-person camera, from a top-down camera, from an isometric camera. It changes from no camera at all. Maybe it's just text. Those are different stories. So you got to figure out the features before you can figure out the content. If you start with the content, you're going to have to find features that fit within the content. And so a lot of people, when they have game ideas, they start thinking of like, and then the player does X, Y, Z. And so if you're that kind of person who thinks, okay, so the player goes into the building and then they jump up here and then they use the grapple hook to go up there. And if that's how you're thinking about games, for everything you say, I want you to think every verb, everything the player does, I want you to think two things. A, which button do they press? And B, how do they know they have to do that? If you can answer those two questions, you're fine. But if you cannot answer those two questions, stop thinking about content and start thinking about features, right? If you're like, I want the player to get to walk down the street. Okay, how do they know they have to walk down the street? Do you tell them? Do we do the Super Mario rules where the camera has your character on the left so players want to walk to the right? Like, what do we do? How do we get them to move in the direction we want? How do we get them to talk to the character we want, right? So as you're building this, I would build the walking skeleton. And the walking skeleton means that, again, I'm going to use a shooter as an example. Make your game the simplest version of your game. So if you have a shooter game, what do you need? You need to be able to walk, you need to be able to shoot, you need to be able to equip a weapon, you need to be able to score points. Say that's true for your shooter game. These things are true. If I build those things, I have a lot. Because what is jumping besides walking diagonally upwards? It's weird just diagonally walking, right? And what is a melee attack but a very short range gun? A shotgun is just a gun that shoots multiple bullets. A bazooka is a gun that shoots a very slow bullet and then does the explosion, right? Crouch is just walk but slow and low. And so if I can get the skeleton of these things in, I can see whether they connect. And if they connect, I've got a video game. But so when people think about RPGs, they often come up with the combat system first. But who has ever played an RPG for a combat system? I've never played an RPG for a combat system. I love RPGs. I play RPGs for the stories, play RPGs for the characters, I play RPGs for the world. But you know what I really play RPGs for? I want to beat up the apple outside of the starting town with my weak sword. And I want to come back 6 hours later with my big armor and my fire sword and my magic spell and just evaporate the apple in one shot. That's why I play RPGs. I like that my numbers go up. More strength, more HP, more magic, more armor. And so if you want to build an RPG, if you look at this, right, the important part is not the combat system. The important part is that I get stuff doing combat that makes me stronger, that allows me to go back to the combat and do it in a better way. And so until you've built that, you've not proven that you can make an RPG. You've proven that you can make a battle system. And I don't care about a battle system. Nobody cares about a battle system, right? And so you got to get this glue. That's why I want to work this way. I want to work horizontal. I don't just want to go, okay, let's make all the weapons. No, I want to see, is finding a weapon fun, right? And then I build the rest, right? As soon as I know that this connection works, I start building the rest. And so if you're a team, this might be a good exercise. This is called a RACI chart. A RACI chart means responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. But the important part is, if you look on this column, on the left is the things we need to do, and at the top is the different people working in our team. And notice that on each of the rows is only one person with the letter A. That is the person that's accountable. That's the person who's in charge of making sure it happens right. The R is the people who are actually doing the work. The C are people whose opinion we ask for, and we might listen to them. And the I is the people we just tell what we're doing and we don't care about their opinion. And so, very often, if I'm doing vision work, I don't talk to my programmers too much. I don't discuss with my programmers. I just have ideas, and then when I have the ideas, I go to the programmers. I go like, "This is what we're doing," and then the programmers go, "Astaghfirullah, this couldn't you have come up with anything better?" And I go like, "No, this is it. You can program it, right?" And then they come back to me 2 weeks later with like, "We can do this, this, and this," right? And so I just inform them. I don't have that conversation until I have my idea, because otherwise I get slowed down too much, right? Um, the important part is that there's always one person who's accountable, and that person is the only person who's in charge of making decisions about it. So the creative director is responsible for the vision, but maybe a designer is responsible for a level. The creative director is responsible for weapons. The producer is responsible for timelines. If you have questions about making this thing, you go only to that person. This is only relevant if you're working in a team. But if you have an art question, you do not go to your programmer. Your programmer is not allowed to answer that question. Your art director is, or your artist, if you're a small team. And so this is about learning to talk to each other in good ways. Since most of you are solo developers, I understand, I'm going to skip these slides for now. But I do want to talk about timelines a little bit. So a game comes in 4 stages. The first stage is the vertical slice. The second stage is feature complete. The third stage is content complete. And the final stage is release candidate. Right? These are your first stages. Now, if you're talking about games to a professional in the games industry, like a publisher who might fund your game, or a fund that might give you money, or another developer that you might want to get on your team, most of us don't look for the exact numbers. We look for the ratios. So say that blue part at the start is your vertical slice. So that's prototype and vertical slice. And then the green part is till you get to feature complete. Feature complete meaning all the features work in the game. It doesn't mean that they have content, right? If we're talking about a Pokemon game, you might have the inventory, right? And there might be items in the inventory. And there's 6 items that can go in the inventory, and then you go to the next page, right? And then you can go back to the page. Feature complete is when I have the inventory with 7 items, so I can go to the next page, I can go to the previous page, I can use an item, and I can delete an item. That's feature complete. I only need 7 items, and the items don't need to do anything. They can literally be called A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's good enough, but I can test whether the feature works. When I get to feature complete, then we go to content complete, is where we build all the content, right? And so this kind of game is a fairly standard game. This might be a roguelike, it might be a shooter, but there's a short amount of time where we're getting to vertical slice, because these are proven genres. Then there's a reasonable amount to get to feature complete, but not too long. And then there's a lot of content, right? So the pre-production is the blue part, and then the production is the green and purple part. But if you look at these games, you can think of what these are, right? What is that blue, the game with a lot of blue? That's the game where there's a lot of prototyping. So maybe that's something experimental. And the game with only one blue part, that's probably a clone of something. They're not having ideas. They're not spending time in pre-production. They just go like, yeah, let's build this, right? The bottom game, where there's a lot of content, more content than any other game. Maybe that's an RPG. RPGs have a lot of content, right? But so if somebody comes to me and they say, okay, we have that third one, right? The third option, the clone. And they say, we're going to build, or let's say the second one, the roguelike, right? And they say, okay, that's an RPG. I don't believe you can build an RPG with that little time to make content. I don't believe it. So I would immediately not give you money. If I was a publisher, I'd be done. I'd walk out of the room. Because I think you're bad at your job. Right? An RPG needs time to build good content, so I want to see lots of time for content. Right? We're gonna skip this part. This is a lot of talk that I don't think it's incredibly important. But when you figure out these timelines, when you figure out when you're done with pre-production, when you're done with your vertical slice, when you're done with your feature complete, when you're done with your content complete, you just repeat and adjust, shifting things around until it all makes sense, right? And so when you're done with vertical slice, that's the first time you know how long it takes to make a character, the first time you know how long it makes to take a level, how long it takes to make a weapon. So from there, your brain can go, okay, if I want to make 12 weapons, we need 12 times this amount of time. If we make 8 levels, we need 8 times this amount of time, right? And so when you do that, you can calculate, okay, it will take this much time to build all this content. And then you've built a number of features, and you can say, okay, it takes about this long to do a feature. Some features are hard, some features are simple. So it'll take this long to get the feature complete. And so as you go, you'll find that some things are true, some things are not. And so you just keep repeating. That's the point where you can go get money. So if you ever want to fund a game, when you get to this point where you know how long it's going to take to build the game, go ask for money. Please go ask for lots of money. Become rich for me. Please, all of you become rich. As you develop, you want to make decisions. Everybody is way too good at saying like, oh yeah, we'll fix it later, inshallah. I've learned one thing about inshallah. There's two versions of inshallah. There's yes, inshallah, and there's no, inshallah. This one is always no, inshallah. If we say we'll do it later, it's no. It's not happening. I need you to make decisions. So I want you to not be done with a thing until it's done. And then as we develop, I want your creative director to zoom into things. If something goes wrong, I want them to look at what's going wrong. I want them to go, okay, this chair looks bad. This is a bad chair. And I want them to, instead of trying to fix the chair, I want you to fix the reason the chair got bad. Why did your artist not know which chair you needed? Was there no good documentation? Was it not clear? Was there no good reference? Why was the chair bad? Zoom out, fix that. Don't fix the chair. The chair will fix itself if you fix that problem. Okay? For the producer, I want the producer to look at the big timeline. We're a little late. We're a little early. And then go zoom in and find why we're late. So I want the producer, if you're in a team, I want the producer to be able to go like, hey, listen, you look a little tired. Is everything okay? Is there too much work? Are you going to be on time? Right? If somebody goes on a holiday, I want the producer to know that they're going on holiday so that we can schedule around that. Right? So I want the producer to be looking at the big picture and trying to solve it at the small picture. I want the creative director to be looking at the small picture, but to solve it in the big picture. Right? These are opposites. Now, 2 rules I want to leave you with before I have to hop. For creatives, if you're making a game, stop trying to make your entire game perfect. Fauzi Mesmar, who I don't know if you are going to have in the program. Yes, amazing. Fauzi has an incredible talk about this, but let me tell you the thing I learned from Fauzi. I call it the 70-25-5 rule. And it's a very simple rule. 70% of your game needs to be just good enough. It doesn't need to be good. Think of your favorite video game. My favorite video game was Golden Sun or Chrono Trigger, the big old JRPGs. 70% of those games is just me walking around the forest beating up hedgehogs. I'm beating up wolves. That's it. That's 70% of those games. It doesn't matter. 25% of those games is pretty good. I'm in a town, I'm doing quests, I'm meeting characters, those are great. And 5% of that game is incredible. 5% of the games are moments that I still remember. In Golden Sun, going up the lighthouse, in Chrono Trigger, seeing Lavos for the first time, or meeting Magnus, or any of these moments. These moments stick with me, and they will stick with me for my entire life. I will never forget these moments, right? But if you try to make that 70% as good as that 5%, now your entire game becomes flat. Because everything is that good. And so the moment that's important doesn't stand out anymore. So allow your game to be okay. Allow parts of your game to be okay. If you're making a game about walking through Baghdad, don't make every moment perfect. The city isn't perfect either. I'm from Cairo. I walked through Cairo. 70% of Cairo is just me wishing the sidewalk was better so that I don't fall and hurt my ankle. But then 25%, are amazing moments of life. People smoking shisha, drinking ahwa, sitting at a shay or playing tola or whatever it is. That's 25 moments. The 5% is those magical moments where the sun hits just right and the Nile has the sparkles on it, and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's perfect. Right? That's how I remember Cairo. I don't remember Cairo being perfect all the time. Don't try to exaggerate how perfect things are in games. Allow 70% of your game to be just good enough. 25% is good and 5% is great. And for your producers, when you get to 50% of the time you have to make your game. So for your brain, if you're a solo developer, for your production brain, for your development brain, when you get to 50% of the time you have to finish this game, you have now built 50% of the game you're going to be able to build. And so when you get to that point, I want you to look at how much you've built. And I want you to be honest with yourself about if you could build that time, that amount one more time. If you would have the same time left that you had for this, how much video game can you actually build? And probably you need to cut some levels, you need to cut some quests, you need to cut some characters. But I want you to be really honest with yourself. When you're at 50%, you've built 50% of your game. You can't speed up or do more. That's not how this works. If it took this much time to get here, it will take that much time. And you'll be slightly better at this, but maybe you can build more, but probably not, right? Because you still have to ship it, you still have to finish it, you still have to add the pause menu, you still have to bug test, you still have to do QA if you're doing a commercial game, you still have to do translation, still has to go to certification. It's going to take longer to build the second 50%. So when you get to 50%, I want you to sit down with your team or by yourself and go, okay, this is what I've built. I can build this much more. What can I still do in that time? I want you to adjust your plans for that amount of work. And then if you have time left, inshallah, you can build more. But I want you to adjust your expectations at that point. Cool. Skip this, skip this. That's it. Thank you. I hope some of that was useful. I was supposed to have a call right now, but I messaged them that I'm gonna be 6 minutes late. So I have time for just a very few questions. If anybody has questions. If somebody has questions, but in this time they don't want to ask them or they think the question is too long, go to my website, click the book button in the top right of the website, and then find the free call option. You will get one free call for your email address. When you book that free call, you can talk to me for 20 minutes by yourself. So if anybody has questions about game development or anything, go to my link, go to book, go to free call, and then book the free call from there. Okay? So does anybody have questions now?
Now, if anyone have a question, you can send it in the chat so we can see it. If
Oh yeah, I
not,
should.
then yeah.
I can open the chat.
I think the only question we see they talk about there is no publisher in Iraq. But this
Yes.
one is yeah, it's already like we have some studios working with global publishers, so the game industry is not just local, not just for
Hmm.
Baghdad and Iraq.
So
So
so just to give you some context, this is also true for developers in Iran, and it's true for developers in Palestine as well, and they also work with publishers. So even though it's hard to move money, and I know it's hard to move money, and there needs to be some shenanigans and harakat to get the money to Iraq, it is possible. And so I know of teams that have managed for Iraq, and I know of teams that have managed to do it through some other ways, and then get money over a different way. So it is possible, but it is indeed more complicated. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. There's 270 publishers out there. And so if you have a good game idea and you can get it to the prototype, you can get it to the vertical slice, you can get the production plan with the timeline and the budget, and you can figure all that out. I want you to email all of the publishers. I don't want you to research the publishers. I don't want you to think about the publishers. I just want you to write one email and send that 270 times. And then out of the ones that answer, inshallah, there's two, maybe four. I want you to pick your favorite. I don't want you to pick favorites before you've sent your pitch and you've heard who wants to talk to you. That's like hoping for a specific gift on your birthday. Like, let's see whether you get the gift, right? So, yeah, there's no publishers there, but um, the industry, as one of the response said, the industry is global. So work with whoever. Um,
Okay. So the last question, I think because we have the similar things. So can I ask, my question is, does any of this not apply for the solo developers?
no, I think
Is
all of this applies to solo developers, but instead of it being two separate people, you have to do all of this by yourself. And so this is one of the hardest skills to learn. I still struggle with it, and I've been in 15 years in the games industry, is being able to be creative and development focused at the same time. And so what I do is I do the first hour of my day, I do production work. I look at my schedule, I look what I've built, I look whether it's looking good, I look at whether my momentum is good, what I'm still feeling good about what I need to be doing. And then the rest of the day, I make the game, right? Because if I'm making the game, say I'm programming, and suddenly I go like, wait, I need to check something. Just the thought of my brain going out of coding takes me 20 minutes to get back into code, right? Like if I'm programming and I get a phone call, it takes me 20 minutes to get back to code, right? And same thing with doing art, same thing with writing. Like if I get interrupted, it ruins the flow. It ruins the thought, it ruins the inspiration. Sometimes I have a great idea, I start working on it, somebody calls me, idea's gone. I don't find it ever again, right? So it is important that you create space in your brain to be the one extreme or the other extreme instead of trying to move back and forth, right?
okay.
Um,
Thank
in
you so
short,
much. I
features
think
important. Sorry, I'm going to go through. I see the chat, so let
yeah.
me let me grab two more questions here.
Okay, cool.
Features are not better than content; they're different from content. Features are harder than content, and so you need to define them earlier than content. But as we saw on the chart at the beginning of the talk, this one, they all work together. They're equally important. Features without content mean nothing, and content without features is just assets. And so when these two merge, when they connect, when they become something together, that's a video game. And so I think we would I would be careful with saying that one is greater than the other. I think both are equally important. But I do think that getting your features in before you start building all your content, or at least not build all your content before you figured out your features, is a really good way to not lose 3 years of your life and then not have a video game at the end. Um, yes. And then the other question I saw, what about making a successful game but with Iraqi themes? What do you think about that? I love that idea. But, and here's the but, the Iraqi part is in the declarative layer. And so it's in how we explain the world of the game. But the core, the center of your game, is not Iraqi. Iraqi is not a feeling. Iraqi has feelings. Iraqi has feelings of pride. Iraqi has feelings of anger. Iraqi has feelings of sadness. Iraqi has feelings of the weight of history and the opportunity and the region. And as an Egyptian, I recognize that because the best thing Egypt built was the pyramids, and those are 4,000 years old, right? And since then, we've been Roman, we've been English, we've been French, we've been everything but Egyptian, right? And so that feeling of history weighing on me, that I recognize, and some of my Iraqi friends have told me somewhat similar that Iraq has a very very complicated relation with history, right? And so I understand that. And so for the core, your core is not Iraqi. The core of your game is a feeling that you get from being Iraqi. or from a story in your history. And so I want you to grab that feeling, separate it from the Iraqi part, and then put the Iraqi part as flavor of a declarative, right? So that the game is Iraqi, but it is a game about love. It is a game about pride. It is a game about being awesome. It is a game about whatever it is, but like at the heart, it's a universal feeling. And so when you think about this, just to wrap up my thoughts, when you think about this, when you think about, and I use this example a lot, so I'm just going to use it, but when you think about war games, right? When you think about games about war, when the Americans, the United States, build a game about war, they always tell stories about going away from their home country and then trying to be a hero somewhere else, and then they win and the world is saved. They beat the one bad person. And when they beat the one bad person, subhanallah, all the problems are solved. And the worst thing that could happen to your main character in a United States game about war is your character doesn't go home. They die. They die somewhere else. That's the worst thing that could happen. When the Germans made a game about war, the Germans who did the Second World War, who were the Nazis, who were defeated, they got taught to be shameful about war. They're ashamed of war. So when the Germans made Spec Ops The Line, they made a war game about shame. You can't win that game. Even if you win the game, you've lost because nobody wins at war. That's what the Germans believe. And so when they made a war game, automatically it became a German war game. And now when the Polish made a game about war, the Polish don't go to war. War comes to Poland. The Germans invaded Poland. Everybody invaded Poland. People just keep invading Poland. Doesn't matter. Everybody wants to invade Poland. And so when the Polish made a game about war, they made this War of Mine. And in this War of Mine, you don't even play a soldier. You play a person hiding in a house, hoping that the war doesn't kill them, doesn't kill their family, doesn't kill their friends, right? And so when you think about this, I don't want you to worry too much about making the game Iraqi. You are Iraqi. The way you look at the world is Iraqi. All I need you to do is not try to copy what exists too much. Clair Obscur is a French JRPG. It's so French. And the reason it's French is because they just allowed it to be French. They didn't look at other games and go like, okay, how does a US game? They didn't do market research. They just went like, okay, we want to make a JRPG, and it's about art and intellectualism and about melancholy and about the feelings of a broken empire and about all of these incredibly French thoughts. And then they just made that. They didn't go like, oh, will somebody in the UK understand? No, they don't give whatever. Screw those people, right? They just build it. They just built the thing that felt true to them. So while you're building your game, don't try to make an Iraqi game. You're Iraqi. You'll build an Iraqi game unless you're convinced to build a game for everybody. And then it stops being an Iraqi game. So build the game, follow your heart. Follow what's true. And then it'll happen anyway. And so for my games, all of my games are about the apocalypse. All of my games are about the end of the world, right? Humanity's end. All of the games I've done so far are about the end of the world. Every Western friend I have, anybody from the Netherlands or England or Scotland or the United States, when they think of the apocalypse, what do they always add to the world? Alcohol. Every Western game about the apocalypse is about people getting drunk. There's always bottles everywhere to show that the world is bad, right? My games, never put that in because it's not who I am. It's not how I work. I don't drink personally. I was raised Muslim, and so I don't drink. That's just the thing. I didn't try that. It wasn't me going like, I want to make a Muslim game. I want to make an Arab game. I want to make an Egyptian game. No, I just made a game. So you just make your game. And then it will be Iraqi automatically. I promise you. Cool. Awesome. Good publisher names. Please don't think about good publishers. Email all the publishers. All of the publishers, every single one. Don't think about it. No research, no thinking, no whatever. Just let me get you actually, before I jump off, let me get you the list of publishers. There's actually an online list of publishers. Let me just give you that list here. Here's every single publisher on one spreadsheet with their email address and their submission form. all of them. Please don't think about it. تمام خلاص. Okay, that
Yeah.
was it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah.